My name is Dwight Mahalitz. I'm the president of Effective Managers. This is part 6 of a series on accountability, and today we're going to talk about context and boundaries in cross-functional work. To start with, I'd like to give you an example of what I see in many organizations. What I'd like to stress is I've got an example organization here of about a dozen people. The principles I'm about to talk to you about might apply in very small organizations or very large organizations. The only difference is the complexity, but the underlying principles are exactly the same. So this is something I see in almost every organization in which I do this kind of work. Let's take, for an example, someone in finance, and for an example, someone in operations. What we're going to talk about here is a situation that arises when there's a different understanding of the work that one is accountable for. So the person in finance, let's say they have a report that's due once a quarter, and that report consolidates information from different parts of operations. So they depend on people in operations to do this work. The person in operations, on the other hand, might not feel that that's really their work. They might feel that this is finance work. So what happens is you have a conflict situation where the person in finance is asking the person in operations to do this work. The person in operations doesn't feel it's really their work and thinks that it's finance work. So sure, I'll do it, but only when I get time. I've got real work to do in operations. It's a no-win situation, so the two of them end up in a conflict because, you know, the person from operations thinks the finance person's always nagging them. The person in finance thinks the person in operations is lazy and not doing their work, when in fact the issue is not with the individuals. The issue is with how the work is delegated down the organization. What happens when work like this is decided, when that report was first decided to be developed in finance? Typically what happens, the head of the organization would talk to the person in finance and would say, we need this new report. The board is looking for this operational report to track this, whatever it is that they're wanting to track. So the finance person the CFO sits down with their finance person, and they work out what this report is going to look like. When is the first time you would think, in most situations, when the person in operations finds out that they're going to have to gather data and submit it in this report? It's usually when the person from finance sends them an email and says, yada, 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 here's a report for you to fill it out. Please have it back to me by the end of the week. So of course the person in operations is going to throw up their hand. So what has to happen instead is that it's the CEO would sit down with the CFO and with the head of operations, the COO, and say, we need this new operations report. CFO is going to work on pulling the report together. COO is going to be accountable for ensuring that the data can be gathered in a good way, and both of them delegate the work down the organization. So what happens then is you have a situation where the context and boundaries is set by the CEO to the CFO and the COO. In a smaller organization, it might be the owner to the accountant and to the person that's doing the actual operations themselves. But in whatever scenario, it's the COO or the owner that sits down with those two individuals, figures out what has to happen and what each of them is accountable for, so that they can delegate that further down the organization and set the context. So we don't have someone in finance who is put in a situation where they have to kind of use their personality to try to convince someone that they should do them a favor. No, it's real work, and it needs to be delegated appropriately. So we talked about, in the last part, in part 5, we talked about identifying the effective point of accountability. This is critical work for the effective point of accountability to do. In this case, it's the head of the organization is the effective point of accountability for delegating this work down the organization and for setting the context and the boundaries so that individuals that are going to be involved in the work, wherever in the organization they are, will understand their accountability and authority. So, in summary then, remember, the effective point of accountability rests with the position that can decide and direct. So decide how to work differently and direct people to work differently. That's it for part 6. I'm looking forward to looking at part 7 with you, where we're going to discuss the different aspects of cross-functional accountabilities and authorities, and actually explore a language for how to work better in organizations. I'm looking forward to exploring that with you. Thank you.